You are listening to Season 2 of The Diary of a Wannabe Writer, the short and often daily podcast in which I chronicle my life and attempt to be a writer by writing daily. Sometimes. Hello, it's Tuesday the 28th of January 2025 and you are listening to The Diary of a Wannabe Writer, and I've got some really good news and also a pattern to point out, because when I wrote chapter 39 earlier in the month, I had a really productive first day, then 3 days where I did virtually nothing, and then another day where I got everything else done, letting me finish exactly 1 day ahead of the schedule I'd set myself. And I've done it again. So today I knew exactly what the remaining 4 scenes were that I needed to write. I also knew I probably wouldn't manage to write them at home. So what did I do? I read a little bit more of the book that I've got to read by tomorrow. Had some breakfast, and then I walked into town and sat in my favourite coffee shop and wrote some of those scenes. Now, there's a couple of moments in them that are in my head a little bit, I don't know about controversial, but certainly a little bit riskier than anything I've put into the book so far. And it's 2 of the deaths. So without wanting to get specific, Lord Farnborough meets an end that could be deemed to be similar to that of King Richard II, only without the heat element. Yes. Yep. So that's fairly unpleasant. But then he's done some appalling things to get up to that point. And so it kind of makes, if you read the paragraph before he's killed, it kind of makes sense in terms of what the Skuld, the tree creature, has been reading in his mind immediately before he is dispatched. So there's that. Then there is a flashback, not a flashback, I don't do flashbacks. There is a sequence set at Mendell House, which is the halls of residence at the university that Ronnie went to in the early stages of the book. And one of the girls there, a young lady called Erica Yates, who has been established that she enjoys the company of men, has basically decided if they're going to die, they're all going to go out with a bang, if you'll pardon the intentional pun. And so she's having what can only be described as a bit of a hedonist party. Now, don't get me wrong, not everybody is at the university. Quite a few of the people have decided, you know, if there's a chance they're going to die, they're going to go home and die with their family. But not everybody either wants to or can. So there's this small group of them left at Mendell House. And yes, and Erica has arranged some entertainments for everybody. I mean, it's not explicit or anything like that. I don't describe anything that happens. It's more sort of suggested. And then, because of course the other sort of important character that is there is Danny's girlfriend Laura, and she doesn't die. That's not really much of a well, it is if you've been following it, I suppose that is a bit of a giveaway. Literally, Laura is in her room by herself. Erica's trying to say, look, don't die by yourself in here. Come into the room. You don't have to take part. Just be in the room with everybody else so you don't die alone. And suddenly this tree creature that looks like their friend Ronnie that died last year or earlier in the year, suddenly bursts through and snatches Laura off. And Erica's kind of, what the effing hell is going on? And by the time she's walked back to the party, she's convinced herself that she found Laura dead and that her brain showed her what it showed her so that her death wouldn't seem too traumatic. Yeah, so you see, it's interesting because I've painted that particular character in a particular way, but she leaves the party to try and talk Laura into coming back with her. And when Laura says she can't, she decides to stay with her instead of going back, you know. So I think it's interesting because it's not painting her as one thing or the other. She's definitely a slightly ambiguous character. Her morals are not traditional, shall we say, but I don't think I paint her as a bad person. In fact, the exchange between her and Laura is quite sweet before the Skuld comes in and takes Laura away, and Erica thinks, oh, what did I just see? I don't know, I'm just going to pretend she's died and just go back to what I was doing before. And then there's the final scene, And the final scene actually upset me it wasn't as I wrote it. I literally wrote the last scene because I had to build up to a moment. You're not supposed to know until the last moment who lives and who dies. And the very, very last moment it's quite sad. It's the death of a character that I earmarked for dying a little while back, but I wasn't totally sure I was going to go through it with it until the moment actually occurred. And that last chapter, it's had several emotional punches, but it needs that last moment to kind of punctuate the end of the story. And I read it back to myself thinking, oh, that's done, that's brilliant. And I read back the last 2 paragraphs to myself and burst into tears. So either I'm insane, which is perfectly possible, or I've done something right. Certainly that character felt very, very real to me. And I forgot to have an emotion when I wrote his death. And then I read it back to myself and it flooded out of me. I'm a weird person, aren't I? So there we go. Chapter 40, which I have now decided to call The Wings of Angels, not Death or Chapter of Death or just Wings. It's called The Wings of Angels. And it's done. Okay, it needs editing still. I'm going to try and do a little bit of that tonight, although I've still got a big chunk of this book still to read. And if I can, my sort of hope is that I can get it signed off today and tomorrow, which leaves me 2 days free. Now, I'm not going to do any writing in those days. I probably won't even do podcasts in those days. If I get basically once I get this chapter signed off, hopefully early, that will be it for this month. I will have a few days off because I've got my annual training at work with exams and stuff attached to it. So I will concentrate on that until after that has happened, which means you'll probably get 5 or 6 days off without a podcast. My aim, so my training is on the 4th and 5th, so I will probably aim to come back on the 6th. But I'll confirm all that in whichever is the last show, which could be tomorrow, it could be the day after, depending on how much editing I get done in the next 48 hours. Anyway, I'm so relieved that I got that done. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back definitely at some point tomorrow with what may or may not be the final update of the month. Take care. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to The Diary of a Wannabe Writer. For more information about what I'm writing, go to linktr.ee/Richard Writes, capital R, capital W, where you can find details of my website and social media. I may see you there.